If you follow the news closely, now former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey are under criminal investigation for potential wrongdoing related to the Trump-Russia probe, including allegedly making false statements to Congress. And recently, a new book called Stakes Treason present verified open source information to show former CIA Director John Brennan conducted a long-term criminal scheme to manipulate intelligence protocols and key counterterrorism personnel to increase the value of stock he held illegally to make millions. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, our nation is standing at the crossroads at this moment. As a patriot, as American citizen, we need to understand why it's crucial for us to expose the truth to the public. It's not just about what we need to know, it's about how we can prevent the things from happening again and again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to invite our distinguished guest. It's Mr. Ian Trottier, and he's the author of this amazing book called High Stakes Treason: How John Brennan Compromised American Security for Millions. Well, Ian, and welcome to The Missing Piece.
Well, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on. And what comes to the top of my head right now is simply the crossroads is very real. There's a polarization politically, and that's difficult to describe exactly how it happened. But it wasn't over, right? What we know is some of the basics here, and that is that there's a left and a right. That has happened over decades, and it seems that the right certainly holds to constitutional values, which make the government great, freedom of various areas of life, that is self-defense, Second Amendment, freedom of speech, those types of things. Those values, in my view, will get caught in the crossfire. The left, of course, adapting policies that are certainly socialist in nature, and they become more radical in that way with every year. So that divide, as you mentioned, is growing deeper and deeper. So what we have here with High Stakes Treason is an example of an incredibly high-level government employee that sided with the left, right? So those policy makers, and the subject of this book, of course, is John Brennan. What I've personally done over the past 2 years is bring the material forward for publication, and that was not easy at all. It was a very difficult process. A little bit of background, Will, for your viewers and listeners to understand. I started a podcast in Miami in 2016. Large part due to, at the time, there was something called the Zika virus, which was a local epidemic to Miami Beach in Miami at the time. But I quickly connected the financial dots to the Zika virus, and that led me down a book called The Federal Reserve Conspiracy, written by a former Stanford Hoover fellow out of research, and his name was Anthony Sutton. He's been dead for a couple decades now. But that book captivated me in 2016. So over the course of the time, I would travel doing events and conventions of that kind of nucleus of my research. And in 2024, so 2 years ago now, in the winter at CPAC, Washington, D.C., which technically in Maryland, the building is in Maryland, I was doing podcasts approached by a well-dressed man, soft-spoken, level-headed, and he was requesting to be interviewed. He placed a binder down. Contents of that binder blew my mind. Completely, it was jaw-dropping. Now, again, I had known from my various researches that there is certainly a hidden government. And they hide their machinations due to, I believe, financial crimes on the American people. And they're able to manipulate regulations and policies and laws and certain things from that angle. It's incredibly sophisticated, of course, as we know. It's an operation to this day, right? So, but this, of course, is my belief. So when I opened the binder, Will, and it's connecting fraud, illegal activity to the former head of the CIA, one of the most powerful men in the world, if you will, certainly in the United States.
Of course.
It resonated with me. Well, it made sense to me. I says, okay, yeah, this is something that I'm going to continue to investigate. And he had been ostracized. He had been called a wacko. He had been called insane, crazy, you name it. And nobody would. He tried to get his information to James Clapper through his brother Michael, to no avail. He tried to get the FBI to act on his research, to no avail. Everybody was shutting the door on him. That material that he presented to me in the binder, that compendium, is presented now to the general public in the title of High Stakes Treason.
Now, Ian, let's talk about this for a second, because again, the word treason is deeply embedded in this book. And of course, today, when we talk about treason, it's not just about the concern for the national security. It's actually the safety of American citizens today. So, Ian, I want you to get a bit deeper. How do we define the word treason when we look at the case of John Brennan? And also, why do you think it is so concerning today to our own national security, and how the political parties or even the political polarizations can be influenced by such concept? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so treason, in a very basic kind of understanding, the way I understand treason, is the person is a traitor. So what a traitor is, to me anyway, is someone who is doing something that is against the best interest, at a detrimental level, the best interest of this country. So they're basically blackmailing the country. You're causing great harm to the country. And what John Brennan has allegedly done, because to a non-trained legal mind such as mine, I would say this is evidence. I can't say that. It's not evidence. It's circumstantial evidence, perhaps. A court of law, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel. These are the people that would have the keys to open up the files, to prove it factual and make it evidence. Make that very clear. So what's in the book is not evidence. What's in the book are allegations. And what has happened is that this individual, it's absolutely sickening. He allowed terrorist attacks to happen on his country's soil. So he's allowed U.S. terror attacks to happen, and he did it at the expense not only of American lives, but he did it to increase a stock that he held in a company called the Analysis Corporation. So every terror attack, and there's 3 individual terror attacks that the book shows that he was involved in, that he basically authorized. There's 3 different attacks. After each attack, Congress would give more funding to the war on terror. Okay,
that's right.
And as Congress gave funding to the war on terror, the counterterror center, then the stock in the company that he owned, which was tied into keeping Americans safe and monitoring terrorism activity, that company is called the Analysis Corporation. As a terror attack occurred, funding increased, meaning his stock increased. So it was to his best interest financially to allow and cause a terror attack to happen. And the 3 attacks that the research shows that he had knowledge of and allowed to happen were the Christmas Day airplane bombing, the Norway bombing by Anders Breivik, and this is the clincher to me. This is what appalled me. Well, those 2 are appalling, but this is what really did it for me, was the Boston Marathon bombing. And furthermore, Will, this is very interesting. So when people buy this book and they read the book, there's an important quote that I want to share. Roger Stone has written the foreword, and Roger Stone has certainly been in D.C. for many decades. I think he was an early backer of Goldwater. Then he got into the Nixon campaign, and he's a stalwart conservative. He's in my view, probably the main reason Donald Trump is where he is today. So Roger Stone is an incredible human being, and he's written the foreword to this book. General Flynn was initially going to write the book. He accepted to write it and look at it, and then he got busy, wasn't able to. But here's a quote that's really interesting to me. And prior to 2 years previous, Will, I always kind of looked at 9/11 and thought, there's something fishy about this 9/11 thing. Right. There's these towers blowing up, and something that always caused me as being, I didn't buy it, right? I didn't buy it. The aggressor, militaristically, in my view, the aggressor has always been this country, right? I mean, we've gone Vietnam, we've gone to Korea, people didn't want to get involved in World War II. We were kind of dragged in both of those world wars. There was a lot of resistance domestically from that, didn't want to get involved in those. And then after World War II, it was just kind of like use the American military to be, these unnecessary, in my view, unnecessary police forces globally, which I'm saying unnecessarily. Well, what's happened now is there's now a domestic concern, right? There's now major problems domestically, but going to 9/11, I can remember when 9/11 happened very clearly, and I thought this just doesn't seem right. We've got a incredible security, national security. We didn't see this coming. That doesn't make it didn't make any sense to me. So Roger provided a quote to me. I had initially asked him to not write the foreword. It didn't come to my mind because I had other folks writing the foreword. John Kiriakou, there's 3 forewords in it. John Kiriakou is a former CIA whistleblower, has written a foreword, and then Brooks Agnew has written a foreword. He's a former speechwriter for Alan Keyes, very, very intelligent human being, so I didn't approach Roger initially to ask him to write a foreword. I just asked him to look at the material and provide a quote that I could kind of say, oh, hey, Roger Stone thinks of this. About the book. Right. So this is the quote, Will. This is the quote that he gave me. This is probably 6 months ago, 6 or 7 months ago. He says, based on his admittedly being a communist, okay, so that's kind of going back to where we began the conversation, right? The political dichotomy and the socialist values on the left, and on the right, the constitutional values. Based on his admittedly being a communist, his conversion to radical Islam, his approval of the visas for 4. And this blew me away. Well, I didn't know this before Roger told me this. His approval of the visas for 4 of the 9/11 hijackers. John Brennan is known to have approved 4 of the visas for the 9/11 hijackers and his orchestration of the Russian collusion hoax. So John Brennan, according to Roger Stone, and according to the information I now have, orchestrated the Russian collusion hoax. So that brings us right up to speed with what's happening right now in D.C. The president's in Europe at the moment. Right. But just before he got on the plane, I mean, this is why this is what's being talked about, is this Russian collusion hoax with Tulsi Gabbard and the files she released. Roger Stone himself has said John Brennan is guilty of treason. He's guilty of treason. Now, treason, if you are convicted of treason in the United States, the penalty is death. Right. So, I mean, that's very possibly, very strongly. And if I have anything to do with it, this man will be put to death. I don't want traitors in this country. And if that's what the Constitution says, then I uphold the Constitution. It's simply my personal belief. So that kind of lays a little bit further groundwork on what happened. And in a nutshell, what's important to understand again is that as terror attacks happened on our soil, Congress made the funding. His stock went up. He became wealthy, and to the tune of just shy of $5 million is what the book shows. Wow.
I mean, Ian, one thing, it's mind-boggling just to listen to the details, and again, listen to the statement from Roger Stone. But again, to our viewers and to the people who are clueless about what happened. But the next question that I really want to ask is, how could such a ruthless behavior to get away within the government? I mean, you think about this. I mean, he was the CIA director. I mean, that's one of the, as you mentioned before, Ian, that's one of the highest positions in the government. I mean, it's crucial, it's center, it's significant to our national intelligence, even to the international reputation for the country. But right now, just based on the evidence and based on everything that you talk about and you read and accumulated, again, on behalf of our people or the people that who genuinely love our country, how could the person get away with it? And what happened to the leadership in our government back in the days? And what happened to the people who knew the truth, but why not speak up to expose John Brennan? What was the fear and what was the complication of exposing the behavior? Your thoughts?
Yeah. So what we're dealing with here with John Brennan is not a run of the mill everyday person such as myself. This isn't even a run of the mill CIA operative. So Will, I continuously, and it's been 2 years, right? I continuously have to go back to my source, and I can name his source. He's fine with that. His name is John Donovan. He's a former FBI analyst. He spent 12 years with the FBI. I continuously have to get on the phone to him or text him and say, John, help me better understand this. Help me explain to this. And literally yesterday, he says, Ian, he says, this is what he says to me what I'm commanding to you right now. He says, you must understand that this is the most intelligent espionage mind in the country, if you will, at least one of them, as he was director of the CIA. He was the most intelligent intelligence mind in the country, and that is how what he did was not meant to be uncovered. It was meant to be hidden. It was meant to be completely disguised.
Of course.
And that is why, as John started digging into this, and he tried to bring this forth to the FBI, and he tried to bring it forth to officials that would understand and expose it, he got nowhere. The other element to that I would apply is this: the design to polarize politics in the country. So create one and two, create a yin and a yang, if you will. That effort has been decades and decades. This is not something that happened. This is not something that happened overnight. So it's not, it's not something this predates Clinton. I think, in my view, Will, we're looking back to the CIA, the assassination of JFK. I think that was probably the kind of last president that was just a constitutionalist, really, right? I mean, some of those Kennedy Democrats today would certainly be people that encourage the policy of Donald Trump. So I think this has happened. This has happened systematically. We've gotten kind of since I've been around. You've had the Bush years, you had Reagan, and then you had the Bush years, and then you went to the other side. You had Clinton, and then you went back to the other side with the Bushes and the, kind of the warmongering and the oil wars, and then back to Obama. But when we went to the other side with Obama, it was even further left, right? It was even further left over there. And then we got to Trump, and we got the MAGA movement. And Trump, it seemed, was pretty much, he was even the Bushes don't like Trump, so he was a little too much for them. And I remember listening to Donald Trump speak in Doral in 2015, and the first person I'd ever voted for, Will, was a guy named Ross Perot, and I voted for him because he was an independent, and he was a business mind, and that's what I thought the country needed. I thought the country needed somebody that was just central and just knew how to manage economics and build businesses, right? And so Ross Perot did that for me, so that's who I voted for. That was the first person I voted for. And then when I heard Donald Trump speak in Doral, in 2005, it was a pre-candidacy for president, so he wasn't even a candidate yet. He said he'd run for president. If he ran for president, he'd do it as an independent, and he'd do it self-financed. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what the country needs. So is there compromisation above him now? I suspect there certainly is in the GOP, because he's ran on the GOP ticket. But again, getting back to kind of what you're asking here, in my opinion, is this is a cultural thing. So I think we could even be looking at John Brennan being set up by the deep state. I think, not to give him a pass. he's, in my view, he has committed treason. He is an enemy of the state, right? Not because he's communist, and not because he practices Islamic religion, but because he has killed Americans.
That's right.
He has purposely killed Americans for his own gain. That, to me, makes him an enemy of the state. But I think it is very possible. And my definition of the deep state is a global agenda. So this is not a domestic, national. The deep state are not Americans. This is something that goes, and this is my opinion, this is a economic machine that originates in Europe. That's what the deep state is to me. It's not Russia. It's not China. It's not North Korea. That's not the deep state. In my research and opinion, the deep state, in my view, and I'll just say it on your show, the deep state, the gatekeeper, if you will, of the deep state is the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. That's the gatekeeper to the deep state. That's what controls central banks, which controls the Federal Reserve. So you're talking about like we're talking about a incredibly sophisticated machine. So what can we do? Well, we can't do anything about foreign, entities. What we can do, you and I as Americans, what we can do is we can uphold laws in our country.
Right.
We can uphold constitutional, and those that violate it, those that violate our laws, we will hold them accountable. And that's what we're doing here with high stakes treason, is we will hold John Brennan accountable for these financial crimes. I hope that helps answer your question.
Oh, absolutely, Ian. Now, I got two more questions before letting you go. Let's talk about going back to the content of the book. Ian, I agree with you 100%. I mean, again, as an American citizen, it's appalling just to listen and to understand the people like John Brennan has done to our country. I mean, again, we have men and women who wear uniforms and serve domestically and internationally to sacrifice their lives every day for the value, for the democracy of our country. But on the other hand, we have someone like John Brennan and completely underestimate and undervalue the Constitution or the democracy of our country, which is not acceptable. Now, but I still want to ask, such a scheme that people like John Brennan that carried out and put together for this own economic interest, how does that influence or how does that relate to our own average American citizens' economic interest? I mean, remember, people are still struggling in our country just to bring food on the table. I mean, we're still seeing this economic recovery. I mean, again, Ian, to be honest, regardless who's sitting in the White House, people really care about paying the bills. People are still struggling about paying the bills. So, Ian, let's come to the simple concept. How can that the book or the evidence that you presented can really shape up our average American citizens' economic interest? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I simply go back to the MAGA movement, that is Make America Great Again. For past few years, I've been working with ranchers. I did an event in Oregon a couple of years ago for ranchers. These are guys that have owned ranches for generations, right? And they work out in the field with their cattle day in, day out. This is what they love to do. They for instance, right, they want American grown beef. They've got a whole battle going on, Will, with beef industries in other countries. And what those beef industries do, particularly Brazil, is they'll move into D.C. because of the power of the U.S., right? They'll move their lobbyists into D.C. and they'll get laws passed. That are in their benefit. So, for instance, a Brazilian meat packer, which I believe is the largest meatpacking company globally, what they have done is they have swayed policy in D.C. to benefit them, so that, for instance, their beef can arrive on our shores. It can sit as long as it sits at a port for 24 hours, it'll get a USDA logo slapped on it, and the consumer it'll get shipped out to the grocery store, and the consumer will pick up the package. It'll say USDA on it, yet it won't show them the origin. So they're assuming they're buying an American-made, American-grown product. But in reality, it's not American. It's from Brazil.
That's right.
And they don't have to disclose that. So those are the types of laws that need to be changed, because I'm an America First person. I'm like yourself, I assume. I'm a proud American. I want this country to be the best it can be. And no other civilization in the history that we know of this, human beings has ever written a document so just and free as the Constitution has. And that is what's made this country great. So I hold on to those principles. And any other country that wants to adapt, then go for it, right? Because it obviously works, right? So I'm an America First person. And what I would say economically is, listeners and viewers, as we go about our 9 to 5, which I've been doing my podcast for 9 years, Will, and so I paint houses, I do carpentry work, I drove for Lyft and Uber, I do what I can, and with every spare moment, I don't have a family, so it's just me. So I've got a little more leniency with my time. I do everything I can to research and uncover and inform and educate. What's really important, Will, is that we as the people, right? So we as the general public, or we as Americans, we educate our politicians, whether it's in a local setting, or if it's on a state, or if it's federal, whatever it may be. We educate the politicians of the research and information that we know. And that is where our power resides. We can start telling, because sometimes when you get politicians that will get elected, they won't know the information we know, right? So it's our job, if you will, if we want to retain this freedom and retain these rights, it's our job to inform the policymakers so that they can make America First policymakers. Now, if they don't want America First policies, right, like Kamala Harris, I don't think cares. Barack Obama certainly doesn't care. Then you do everything you can to kind of let them live their life. But the folks that want to make the country great, we just keep moving forward. So John Brennan obviously is not an American First individual.
Of course, Ian, I agree with you 100%. Again, so that's why every time that when we listen to not only people on the left, but what they call themselves the progressives, like we're seeing the Bernie Sanders and AOC, the people that claim that put country first, but look at their policy, examining the content within the policy. I'm sorry, Ian, to say that it just doesn't make sense to me at all. I mean, again, as I said, as a patriot, as a person who loves the country, I cannot bear and I cannot stand the lies that presented from the other side. Well, Ian, I gotta wrap up the conversation by asking you the last question. Again, your book is called High Stakes Treason: How John Brennan Compromised American Security for Millions. Final question, Ian. What would you expect the readers to understand and appreciate when we finish reading this amazing book? Your final thoughts.
I'd like readers to appreciate the work of the FBI analyst that presented the information to me. That's what's critical here. John Donovan is an American hero. He is the one that has compiled the information in the compendium. He's asked me to deliver it to the masses. So I went through it. It's been edited. I've vetted the information. I stand by it 100%. I've added to it where I need to. I've gone through the chapters and added what I need to. But the material, the nexus of it, the point, the research that shows the fraud with John Brennan and the ties to the administration he worked in and the company he worked for, that'd be the TAC, the Analysis Corporation, the Obama administration. That nexus itself is John Donovan. So that's what I want readers to take away from, is that he's in a sense, right? He is a whistleblower. None of the information is confidential. Nothing is top secret. It's all collected from open source databases, which was basically public domain. But because of his training as an FBI analyst, he understood and he knew how to piece all the information together. So that's what I want. There are American heroes amongst us, such as John Donovan, that are working to get the truth, and the stories out there. And certainly, you and I are alongside John as we do our work to carry forward those efforts. But the other thing to take away from this, is that yes, there are enemies within, and we need to hold them accountable. We need to root them out. We need to hold them accountable, and we need to exterminate them if they have broken a law that requires such causality.
Of course, Ian, again, coming back to the principle that we all know, it's no one is above the law in this country. And we all need to follow and abide the law as American citizens. Well, ladies and gentlemen, such a great honor to speak to Mr. Ian Trottier. Again, he's the author of the amazing book, High Stakes Treason, How John Brennan Compromised American Security for Millions. Well, Ian, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and we'd love to have you back on the show as we continue to expose the lies and hypocrisy of those people, and in order to keep our country safe and sound for the whole world. So thank you so much for doing this, Ian. Really appreciate it.